Imagine cramming yourself into a tiny glorified torpedo with barely enough air to breathe and no way to escape if things go wrong. This isn't a sci-fi nightmare, this was the reality for German Neger pilots in World War II. Born out of desperation, these bizarre one-man subs carried high risks and slim chances of survival, yet they created heroes and myths. From their invention to their deadly missions, including the dramatic story of Walter Gerhold, a war hero turned propaganda star, this is the untold saga of the Neger submarine. The war is at its peak, and the Germans, desperate to find any edge against the Allies, roll out the Neger. Now, this wasn't some high-tech, state-of-the-art machine. It was more like a torpedo with a guy stuffed inside it. Kinda crazy, right? The Neger was introduced in March 1944. The submarine got its name from its creator, Richard Moore. In German, Moor is an antiquated term that translates to Negro in English. And this is how the submersible came to be called the Neger. Moore played a pivotal role in developing this manned torpedo, which was a unique and desperate innovation used by Nazi Germany during the war. It weighed about 2.75 tons and it was just 7.3 meters or 24 feet long. Built by the Kriegsmarine, its purpose was straightforward: attack Allied ships using sheer stealth and audacity. Unlike traditional submarines, the first version of the Neger couldn't dive. It just floated slightly below the surface, relying on the darkness of night for cover. Let's talk about the experience of piloting this thing. The cockpit was a cramped dome with barely enough room to sit. There was no pressurization, so the pilot was constantly exposed to the elements. Leaky canopies and foggy domes made it even worse. If you ever sat in a sauna with a broken fan, you might get an idea of how uncomfortable it was. And the controls, think of them as bare bones. A simple steering wheel, a compass, and basic switches powered the electric motor that could push the Neger to a maximum of 4 knots, or just under 5 miles per hour. The design was based on the German G7E torpedo, which the engineers essentially split into 2 parts. The lower section held the warhead, a 533mm torpedo capable of inflicting serious damage. The upper section, that's where the pilot squeezed in. These were first tested in late 1943, and by early 1944 they were deemed operational, although ready might be stretching it. Around 200 Negers were built over the course of the war. The upgraded version, called the Martyr, could actually dive a little up to 25 meters or 82 feet. This was a game changer because it gave the pilot at least some chance to avoid enemy detection. But diving too deep could lead to catastrophic failure. The Martyr fixed some of the flaws, but the basic design stayed just as dangerous for its operator. The Neger first saw action during one of history's most pivotal battles, the Allied invasion of Normandy in June 1944. In the early hours of June 6, 40 Negers were deployed near the beaches. The goal was to sink as many Allied ships as possible, but the operation was a disaster. Out of 40 submarines, only a handful ever made it to their targets. Still, they managed to sink 2 British minesweepers, HMS Magic and the HMS Cato. The cost: nearly all the pilots were lost, either killed in action or captured. The Negers weren't just used in Normandy, they were also deployed in the Mediterranean and the English Channel. One of the most notable missions happened on the night of July 7th, 1944, when 21 Negers attacked Allied ships off the coast of France. The mission was a bloodbath. Spotted in the moonlight, nearly all the Negers were destroyed by aircraft and patrol ships. Yet, they managed to sink the minesweeper HMS Pylades and badly damaged the Polish cruiser Dragon. And then there's Walter Gerhold, the most successful Neger pilot, a name that became synonymous with courage and later controversy. During a daring operation in the English Channel, Gerhold managed to sneak his Neger past Allied patrols under the cover of a stormy night. Against the odds, he launched his torpedo and scored a direct hit on what was reported to be a British cruiser, sinking it in spectacular fashion. His mission was hailed as a massive success. This act of bravery turned Gerhold into an overnight war hero. He was awarded the Knight's Cross by none other than Admiral Karl Donitz himself. Now, here's the thing. The Knight's Cross was Germany's highest military honor for bravery, and it was almost never awarded to low-ranking seamen. So, for a humble Neger pilot to receive this honor, that was huge. Gerhold became an instant propaganda celebrity, his face plastered on posters, and his story spun as the ultimate example of German valor. Later investigations revealed that Gerhold hadn't actually sunk a cruiser, as initially believed. Instead, it turned out to be a destroyer. Still impressive, sure, but not quite the level of triumph as sinking a heavily armored cruiser. Regardless, it didn't diminish Gerhold's bravery in the eyes of many. Even if the story was exaggerated, it showcased the risk these pilots took every time they launched on what was often a one-way mission. In the end, the Neger program was as much about desperation as innovation. These submarines were dangerous, uncomfortable, and incredibly risky. Out of dozens of missions, only a handful succeeded. But you've got to admire the sheer courage, or insanity, of the pilots who climbed into these underwater death traps. Today, the Neger stands as a reminder of the lengths nations will go to during wartime. It wasn't a game changer, but it was a bold and risky attempt to turn the tide. And while the technology didn't quite hold up, the stories of these pilots who braved these missions live on as a testament to their determination, even if the odds were never in their favor.